Okay, this vlog is to provide you the information presented to us by the director, Professor Hope Parisi. In the meeting, she presented an article from the New York Times, "You Can Go Home Again" by Karen Fingerman. And the reason this article is presented is to emphasize the importance of reading and focusing on each paragraph and really getting into each paragraph when you read. This is very important for students to do, especially students in remedial English classes needing more help with reading. A comment was, or actually a question was asked regarding the purpose of this approach in reading, in leading the students to really get into each paragraph. What's the purpose? Well, from my personal experience with students, especially in remedial English classes, many of them, well, I don't want to say many, but there are students who would read an article and they would zero in on one paragraph, and sometimes even one sentence, one or two sentences, and ignore the rest of the article, and then they would say, that's what the article is about, and they would ignore everything else, and they would speed through everything else, and it's as if they didn't read the rest of the article. And in the end, when they answer questions, they get most of the questions wrong, and it's obvious that they don't understand the reading. So in this approach presented by Professor Hope Parisi, is actually a very good approach. Hope recommended that we tell the students that every paragraph has a role, and asking questions like, what is the function of this paragraph in this article? What's the role of this paragraph? And generally, I emphasize to students that each paragraph usually has a key point, and that key point would, the role of that key point is to support the author's main idea or main focus, or you could call it a thesis. And so as you read, when you read news articles or articles from the New York Times, that main idea, or in academic writing we call it the thesis, may not, and usually the main idea is not found in the first paragraph, and you will see that in this article, You Can Go Home Again, the main focus of the thesis of this article is actually found in the third paragraph. Let's go over the article before commenting further on the different parts of the article. But we're not going to read the whole thing together. I'm just going to quickly review each paragraph, and provide the comments mentioned in the meeting and my own comments. So before you continue, I recommend that you go to that article and read it at least once on your own first. Somewhere below this video, or possibly on this video, you will see the link or the URL to click to go to that article in the New York Times. So with the assumption that you've read the article at least once, let's go through it paragraph by paragraph with comments. First paragraph is simply, they're back. In the meeting, someone mentioned that it's generally to hook the reader, and that's generally true. But there's something specific that this short paragraph does, and that will be clearer when we get to paragraph 2. Paragraph 2 is generally about young adult kids moving back home with parents after they graduate from college. So now we know who they are in paragraph 1. They're back. That's the young adult kids moving back home. But their back also has an implication of horror. As someone mentioned in the meeting, that's from an old movie, The Poltergeist, and the quote "their back" has an implication of horror. In this case, the author is using this quote to imply the the preconceived notion, the common understanding that kids moving back home is some type of horror for the parents and or for the young adult kids themselves. In paragraph 3, so after the author brought up the common preconceived notion of the horror of kids moving back home, paragraph 3, the authors does a 180-degree turn in mentioning that these situations actually provide, and I quote, closer bonds between young adults and their parents, close quote. And the author mentions that, or actually there's two authors. The authors mentioned that these situations should be celebrated and do not necessarily, and I quote again, do not necessarily compromise the independence of the next generation, unquote. Even when I was reading this for the first time, by this point in the 3rd paragraph, I got the sense that this is probably what this whole article is about, this 180-degree turn, mentioning that this trend of young adult kids moving back home is actually something beneficial, something to be celebrated, quoting the author. Paragraph 4 further supports that probable thesis from paragraph 3 regarding the benefit of kids moving back in together. Paragraph 4 mentions the benefit of the parental help, the extra parental help, so the benefit for the kids, stating that these kids have, or these young adult kids, they're adults but they're also kids. They have clearer life goals. They have they have practical support such as room and board, and having a car available, and having parents to listen to what goes on during the day, on their day. Paragraph 5 is also further support of the benefit of these living arrangements. It mentions that the young adults today are actually savvier than young adults 25 years ago because they receive advice from their adult parents. And I quote, "They have greater life experience and material resources to offer," unquote. And that actually refers to the parents providing them with greater life experience and resources. So this is part 1. Part 2, I will continue in video part 2, and that video will have my interpretation of paragraph 7, which is a paragraph of statistics, is something that I didn't even share at the meeting. I didn't share with anyone, and I'm sharing it in the video. If you're viewing this from my blog, part 2 is right below this one. If you're viewing it on YouTube, the link to part 2 is somewhere below the video or on the side.